This is the number we always play when people ask us to play more.
I'm milling about with Alex Winter, and he is the director of Zappa. Hi, Alex.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm really good. What do you think of my backdrop? I just so
think it's
happen to
good.
have a recording studio in my other room.
It looks impressive. Yeah.
What were you most surprised about when you were doing all the research and going into Frank Zappa's treasure trove?
You know, I mean, there were so many surprises in every corner of this project. I was surprised at how big the vault was, period. I'd heard of the vault. I did not realize it was so vast. I was surprised by how much of the vault had been literally created by Frank himself and very carefully curated and cataloged by him all throughout his life. It was kind of a living project unto itself that he was engaged with without assuming it was going to ever be public. So it's a very interesting thing. Then every day there was a surprise in terms of what we turned up, and we preserved a lot of the media down there. And so every time we got something back, it was generally not what was listed, what we expected, often was only half of something or without sound. It was a really exhaustive process, but it was very rewarding. The material was incredible.
Well, give me an idea of like a very rare find that you came upon that you were like afraid to even touch it.
Honestly, it was almost all of it was like that because of the significance of his career and the significance of the times. Speaking to the times, any documentary filmmaker would know that it's impossible to find media of the Sunset Strip in the 60s, the real rock and roll heyday, the beginning of the LA rock scene, just does not exist anywhere. And when I found that footage, when I found it in all different places and we kind of cobbled it together and turned it into something, that was really extraordinary. And it was very, very rare. Then there's everything we found at Zappa was rare: home movies and concert footage and him going to Czechoslovakia to deal with the revolution that was going on there. It was just endless.
Those home movies are priceless, and I had the pleasure of chatting with Amit. What a doll! I know you guys are buddies, but
Yep.
he really pushed for you for this. And why do you think you finally won his mother of all people over?
I think that when I sat down with Gail, I think that she and I became friends. So I had actually a fair amount of time to discuss this with her later. But she said that most of the people that came to pitch biographies of Frank were what she called, lovingly, I might add, because it is what allowed them to have a living, she called the Zappa fanatics. And they were the people who lived and died by Zappa and knew every single track on every single album in terms of how it was mixed and recorded and whatever. I was never a Zappa fanatic. I loved the music. I was very fascinated by the man growing up in the 70s and all the way through. I came to love his music as an adult, really. But I was most interested in his relationship to his art and his relationship to the world around him. He's a very unique example of someone who both made really great art on his own, but was extremely active in the world around him politically and socially. And it's just not common, especially for artists who weren't outwardly political musicians, more like the folk scene world or someone who's an activist first or their politics are on their sleeve in that way. Zappa was both a great composer and musician and a very engaged political thinker. That to me it makes for a fantastic documentary. And I told Gail from the beginning that I didn't want to make a kind of music doc out of this. I wanted to make more of a cultural doc, a doc that really explored a man in his time.
Well, Alex, I mean, you really did get out of her things that she might not have even imagined. You got her to admit about Frank Zappa's affairs with other women, which was so candid. I was shocked that she opened up to you about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really honest with her that I didn't feel a story about Zappa that had any substance could avoid these glaring aspects of his personality that A, everybody knew, and B, spoke to the times, that a lot of the hypocrisies of the era. The sexual revolution was often very one-sided, towards the male. And And
Sex,
Gail's
drugs, and
very,
rock and roll, right?
that's it. Yeah. She's very bright. She was very bright. She's no longer with us, unfortunately. And very politically conscious. And so I knew she wasn't going to shrink under or wither under these questions. And thankfully she was ready to talk about them.
Now, you weren't aware that she was sick at the time, yeah?
I was aware she was sick, but nobody, including her, thought she had so little time left.
Mm.
She and I thought we were embarking on a project, not together, because she was going to go and let me make my own film, but certainly one that she was going to be around for. And she knew that we had years in front of us. So it was very shocking when suddenly she went into hospice and then passed quite quickly. And I was very grateful that I just picked up a camera and started filming her immediately, not knowing that she had so little time left.
Was she able to see the final cut of the film?
She wasn't even alive when we started the film. She
Oh,
went, no, I started shooting her on my own dime just because I just thought it was important it was for me a research uh, component anyway. I just wanted to start getting conversations and get a sense of her perspective. Those became her interviews in the film because she was no longer with us. We spent 2 years just preserving vault material before we even started making the film, and Gail died at the very beginning of that process. So she was long gone before I started cutting the movie.
wow, wow. What about the kids, the other kids, Moon and Dweezil and Diva? Did you have to get their approval, or did you
No,
want?
the rights were squarely with Gail. It's pretty common in doc world that you if you're dealing with either IP or like a legacy like this, that you have to go to whoever controls the rights. Beyond that, I didn't need any permission, and so we just took the vault material and started working immediately as soon as she gave us permission, and we were working clean through.
Did you get any feedback from them on the movie?
Not really. I mean, I did recently that they all really like it, or the people that I've talked to have really liked that. It makes me very happy. Obviously, have a lot of respect for them. I first saw Dweezil play live, I think in like '91, maybe even '90 at the Whiskey. So I mean, these are people who are the family. The kids are all great artists in their own right. So I have a lot of respect for all of them. So it's something I just kept in mind as I went.
And I also like that you sort of steered away from all the drama that had been going on with that family all through the
Well, it
years.
just wasn't the film I was making.
Yeah.
I was making a movie about Zappa, and that ends in 1993, sadly. So that was it. That was and that was more story almost than I could accommodate.
Well, speaking of that, what didn't make the cut that you wish did?
Nothing of any significance in my mind from a narrative perspective. Plenty that's significant from his life perspective. You could easily make a 10-part series out of Zappa's life, and someone should do that at some point. It's not the kind of film I make. I tend to make movies that are almost more like narrative films in terms of the doc work that I do. But there's a lot of amazing stuff. Believe me, there's a lot of incredible vault material that people should see at some point. Nothing that, I mean, this is my director's cut, and Mike Nichols, the editor, who worked tirelessly, did an amazing job. He and I didn't put the pencils down and think, oh, if only we had done X or Y. We really felt like this told the story as clearly as possible with as much impact as possible. It's one of those things that the more you pull on the thread of a sweater like this, the more it unravels. So you're almost better off like just backing off at a certain point.
What was your personal gem in terms of an interview that you got? Now you know what it feels like to be
Oh,
on
I've been
both
doing this a
ends.
long time, but yes, I do know what the other side of the other side of what you do feels like.
Yeah.
Um, the interviews were so powerful. I mean, every single one of them. Gail at the beginning, once I realized that she was really going to go there, as they say, um, really powerful, very emotional interview. The interview we got with Ruth Underwood, just all of our time we spent with Ruth, her performance of Black Page with Joe Travers. I mean, our whole crew was just in tears that whole day. It was such a powerful and intimate and honest interview.
I think she
Um,
was in love with him. Was that
yeah,
your
but
sense?
but through the art, it really felt to me, it was such a a powerful example of like of an artistic collaboration having so much depth and meaning for somebody. It just was, it was really great. But everybody, Vi was amazing, and Tunis, and we were really lucky. I mean, we were very selective. It was, it doesn't mean that these are, in our opinion, are the most the most important people to speak on Zappa. They were just people that I selected to fill very specific gaps in his emotional life, and we were really lucky, I feel like, that in what we got out of them.
Yeah, and the fact that, you are taking a piece of history. What do you think Frank would be doing today if he were alive, aside for running for president, which I'm sure
You know what? That's exactly what I was about to say. I mean, he'd be running for president, and he'd be on album number 4087, and he would be conducting an orchestra somewhere. And look, there's no reason to assume he would have stopped. He would only be 80. My mom is 82, and she's a ferocious, vivacious person. He was very politically engaged. He would have been living through exactly what he warned us was coming. And I know he would have had a lot to say about it, but also the digital revolution is something he had a lot to say about. Even in the late 80s, he was already aware what was coming. And certainly artistically, he would have been on fire.
And so ironic, he was involved in censorship, and I think there's an album that had no lyrics on it at all, and it was censored, of Zappa's. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm not aware of too much of his stuff that was actually censored, period. Which one was that?
It was it was like all an orchestrated CD with just music, and it had like the big,
Oh, right. Well, that was a badge of honor in those days. Yeah. And all his music titles, whether it's Yellow Shark or even all instrumental stuff, all of his track titles are usually fairly provocative.
Did you, I'm sure you're very young, but did you ever have an opportunity to see him live, or?
I didn't get a chance to see him live. No, I met him a couple of times in passing, but I didn't, unfortunately. Though I'm certainly not too young to have seen him live. It's just there are artists that you just missed, and some of my favorite artists I never got to see live. It's just one of those things, despite having been going to shows my whole life.
What was that memory of meeting Zappa, or passing Zappa, so to speak?
It was great, actually. I was seeing a Dweezil show at the Whiskey, I think in like, I don't know, 90, maybe 1990, maybe 91. And I was just bopping along to the show, and there was this sort of towering presence next to me that was kind of in my way. And of course it was Frank. So, and it was fun to watch Frank watch his son play. He was such a joyful experience for him.
Absolutely. And I think he also loved the fact that his kids were creative as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Moon gave him his biggest hit that he ever had. So
yeah, Valley Girl, right?
Yeah, Valley Girl. Yeah.
That was a great story. Tell us that story.
Well, I mean, it's sort of legendary in Zappa annals, but I think she, at a certain point, a fairly young Moon was a little disgruntled that so much of Dad was locked away in the studio when he got home. So she wrote a letter to him asking to collaborate, knowing the way to his heart. And even though he loved his kids dearly, but maybe the way to his attention, and slipped it under the door of his studio. And, as if it was like a business inquiry. And he responded, and they created Zappa, Valley Girl together, and it was a giant global hit.
Yeah. And he also had another huge hit, Dancing Fool.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, these songs were so funky in the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Dancing Fool was my induction into Zappa, really. I mean, my brother and his friends, they would all play the albums, but seeing him perform that, and he did an Allman Brothers cover on SNL as well. And I remember just thinking, oh, this guy is really fascinating beyond just being a good musician.
Are you musical at all?
Yes, my brother's a professional piano player, and I grew up playing piano, and then I played bass guitar for many, many years in bands and things like that. And
of course. Hello.
Yeah. Well, that's air guitar. That doesn't count. But
I just had a brain fart. Forgive me.
Yeah.
So, what other projects do you have in the works?
Well, honestly, we've been releasing 3 films during a pandemic. It's been insanely busy with Showbiz Kids, Bill and Ted 3, and now Zappa. So my company has been really all hands on deck in distribution all year. We're developing a couple of big doc projects that we won't start until next year. But really, all of our attention right now is focused on the moment, which is there's a lot to do.
Can you talk about those upcoming
A
docs?
little bit. One is musical and one is political, and that's about as much as I can say. Though both are kind of political in that I don't tend to not make things political even when they're not. But I'm looking forward to doing another music-oriented piece, but it's not a big biography like this.
Cool. Well, of course, this is coming out the day after Thanksgiving, so we will all be in a turkey coma.
Yes, Franksgiving we're calling it.
I know. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
So, any special plans for the holiday this year?
I mean, we've canceled most of them. Everybody is staying local, so we're not really, we're not seeing family and not getting together as we normally would, and not even really going anywhere where there's, numbers of people. But look, I'm looking forward to doing it, and Keanu and I are going to hang out for Thanksgiving because he and I are about the only 2 people that we know who are testing as much as we are. So we're like, he's like the safest pod I have. But yeah, it's a tricky time as everyone knows. So we're playing it very safe. Who's
doing the stuffing and who's doing the cranberry and all that good stuff?
I'm not sure yet. I think we have to. Yeah, we have yet to divvy up the duties, but it's a much simpler affair this year because it's much smaller.
So just the 2 of you are having Thanksgiving together?
No, but my family is very small, and I'm not bringing outside family in, and we're not expanding. It's going to be pretty low key.
Gotcha. Well, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Alex, for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad you enjoyed the film, and I'm glad you were talking to Ahmet and everybody. It's great.
Oh yeah, it's a Thanksgiving week.
Yes, it is. Yes, it's about time too. Yeah.
All right, take good care.
Great, thanks. You too.
Don't waste your time.
Always news.
Always refreshing.
Always candid.
Always milling about.
Robin Milling delivers what celebrities are saying to you.